All right, we got a lot more news to get to here on your Tuesday. Canada's election. I mean, unbelievable devastation in Canada. I don't understand. Well, we're going to dive into it. I guess the numbers make sense when you've had massive numbers of illegal immigrants and legal immigrants pouring into Canada over the past many decades. Totally alters what Canada, how they vote and then we see the election results. We see the returns coming in. It's unbelievable. Over 80% in the Liberal ticket on the Liberal votes were specifically from immigrant populations. So unbelievable. We're going to talk about that. Well, did President Trump lose the election for Pierre Poilievre? That's what conservatives are saying because they are stuck with Trudeau 2.0. Mark Carney won election as Prime Minister of Canada. Of course, he was the interim Prime Minister, but now he is officially the leader of Canada. David Crayden warned us that this would happen, and it happened. And now Canada has declared itself an enemy of the Trump administration. And here is David Crayden is joining us now. David, great to see you. I just want to play, and I'm sure you probably haven't gotten any sleep at all dealing with all of the craziness over the past 24 hours, but I just want to play from his victory last night, Mark Carney, in his acceptance speech, in his victory speech, laying the gauntlet down on America and going to war with Trump, essentially. Watch.
We see every day what the politics of slogans and anger and chaos are doing south of the border. They are dividing and they are weakening the Americans. And now the Americans want our strength. They want our resources, our water, our land. They want our country. There's your answer. There's your answer.
There's your answer. So America wants Canada, I guess, and they are going full on against President Trump. Just first of all, your high level response to Mark Carney winning last night, David. Were you surprised?
Yeah, I thought Poilievre was gaining momentum in the last 2 weeks and is doing better polling wise. And I really thought he was connecting. Once again, the crowds were 3-4 times the size at his rallies. And he was definitely getting his act together after listening too closely to his communications people, which were giving him horrible advice for the first 3 weeks of this election. He started listening to his inner voice in the last 2 weeks and just was himself and was speaking candidly. And it seemed for a while that he was going to be able to make this. But what really amazes me, Clayton, is that there were so many revelations during this election campaign about Mark Carney, about him being so tied to China, about his globalist past, about his company, Brookfield Asset Management, basically avoiding taxes for years, and it was investigated by the Canada Revenue Agency. There was just, every day there was another revelation about how steeped in corruption this man is and how he's in no way making Canada strong. He's making the globalists strong. He's making China strong. And yet it's like he wore a suit of Teflon, and it just was not getting down to the people who needed to hear this. And maybe that's because I'm listening to new and independent media, and I'm thinking, why isn't this getting out there? And the reason, of course, is the CBC and the CTV and Global News. They're not reporting this at the same rate as the independent media in this country. So I think that might have been one of the reasons. But we're in for a hell of a ride.
Yeah, I want to bring up some. Oh, no, sorry. I wanted to put up some statistics here from last night's and how high the immigrant districts, because I think this is very, very important. So here's what Jack Prosobiec tweeted just about an hour ago. Said Liberals won 80% of high immigrant districts in Canada. Canada's population is now 25% foreign born and set to increase. This is what they want for America. And then take a look at this next chart. It's unbelievable that Canada's net international migration from 1952 to 2023. Look at that massive surge after 2020. It's staggering. Hundreds of thousands of immigrants from India and other areas voting overwhelmingly for Mark Carney and voting for the Liberals. I mean, this is exactly what the United States wanted to have happen and Biden was hoping would happen. So do you think that this is the main reason, the main mover and shaker here?
It's certainly one of the major reasons. And this is what the Liberals have been doing for quite some time. The last 10 years of Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney, there has been irresponsible immigration policies. And the Liberals want to pack this country with new immigrants who will vote for them because they're grateful, because the Liberals brought them in. And it's not a new thing. It's just accelerated to such an astonishing degree in the last 10 years. And that chart says it all, because we used to have normal immigration into Canada, and it has become so out of control. And I don't think Mark Carney is going to make any changes to that. And certainly that was something Pierre Poilievre was talking about, reducing immigration and getting tougher with illegal immigration. So I don't think we're going to have a chance to see that happen, at least this year. But I was absolutely shocked, as I said, with the incredible ignorance of Canadian voters. I just call this a manifestation of stupidity to allow this man to be prime minister after everything he has done. He's never done anything except for himself. He is probably the most narcissistic. Trudeau was narcissistic. This man is twice as narcissistic. He's probably worth $100-200 million. But you know what? We don't know that because he hasn't revealed his financial statistics. He won't reveal his assets because he says, I have 120 days to do that after I became prime minister. So, of course, now if he reveals that, well, he's already prime minister, isn't he? And he waited very conveniently. And go ahead.
Well, I noticed what worked for him did not work for Kamala Harris. They were able to rebrand him as brilliant and nascent and cool. And a lot of the liberal talking points of like, he is for women's rights, he is for gay rights, he is for immigration,
trans.
He is right. He's open to, these freedoms of women, healthcare. It just worked. It worked really well for people, for the more, I want to say, unstudied liberals. And the reason I want to say it didn't work for Kamala Harris is because we had the exact same circumstance that you had in Canada, is high cost of living, ethics scandals, opioid death, violent crime rates, illegal immigration, every American city getting worse in social decline. And Americans said, we just can't afford to keep voting for this. So I'm so confused that Canadians said, this is fine. You know what I mean? How do they think that it's fine?
This must be a masochistic nation, hungry for punishment, because that's what's going to happen. We're in for a hell of a ride. The policies that Mark Carney didn't talk a lot about during this campaign. He talked a lot about the policies he stole from Pierre Poilievre, like putting more money into the trades, getting people educated to get a trade position. But Mark Carney wants to institute a home equity tax. And that is going to absolutely decimate homeowners. And that means when you sell your home, you're going to be taxed at a horrendous rate. And this is if they haven't bled us dry now, they'll do it with that. Mark Carney wants not a consumer carbon tax, although I think we'll get that one too, a corporate carbon tax and a carbon tariff. So if anyone wants to trade with Canada, they have to adopt net zero policies. What's going to happen? Well, it's going to be economic disaster. But I do want to say one thing. Donald Trump should not have interfered in this election. Now, I love Donald Trump, and I usually support the man. But I'm not in the bag for Donald Trump, and I will never say he's always right. And he interfered in this election on 3 occasions. He endorsed Mark Carney 3 times. And Mark Carney used that to his advantage. And I am just so mad at Donald Trump for doing this, because I do think he is in some way responsible for Poilievre failing to win this yesterday. And I'm not happy with Trump today.
I think it's like an intentional sabotaging. I can't quite wrap my head around it other than that, because, with Poilievre, you looked at the numbers, right? And as soon as Poilievre started criticizing Trump, his poll numbers plummeted. And was almost like to the day when he started criticizing Trump, aligning himself on the Ukraine war, but really being outspoken against Trump, his numbers tanked. in Canada. And then Trump comes out and endorses Mark Carney. And I don't know if it's the banking background or the China connection. I have no idea. I still to this day cannot wrap my head around why Trump endorsed Carney unless it was intentional sabotage and he was just trolling him.
Yeah, they do have some history in the financial world. Mark Carney's company bailed out a huge apartment complex owned by Jared Kushner. So there is a connection there. And Mark Carney and Trump have been better friends than they're pretending right now, which is, I think, is why Trump wasn't playing the game. He was saying, oh, good old Mark, the prime minister. Yeah, we know each other very well. Mark Carney was playing the game of we have to resist Donald Trump. And at the same time, even though Poilievre was criticizing Donald Trump, he was painted as the Canadian Trump, as the mini Trump, the Canadian version of Donald Trump. And to some extent, they do share some policies, but in other ways, they're not. And
well, how bad would it have been, David? I mean, how bad would it have been if he was? Because look at Canada right now, across all these markers right now. I mean, it's an unbelievable. We talk about homelessness, 10 cities, right? We're talking about rampant inflation across Canada, opioid deaths, Natalie talked about, right? Fentanyl crisis, ethics scandals, Chinese influence in the government, massive.
Rising abuse of power, rising cost of living, and yeah, you're right.
I'm reminded of like Costanza on that episode of Seinfeld. He's like, my whole life I've done something a certain way and I've been a total failure. He's like, what if I did the exact opposite? And he starts having incredible success. It's like, well, Canada has literally shot itself in the foot for the past 15, 20 years. Maybe they should try something else if everything else they've tried has failed.
I think if Poilievre had have just pulled the plug and taken some chances and stopped trying to appease the liberal media, I think it would have had a positive effect. Yeah. But they're so afraid of offending the liberal mainstream media in Canada. And this is why the first 3 weeks of that campaign were a disaster for Pierre Poilievre. It sounds like he felt he was entitled to win. He felt he couldn't lose. And he was listening very carefully to his campaign manager, who was consistently giving him bad advice. And I think he should have taken more chances. I think he should have really said, hey, we need some radical change in this country because we're on the verge of a complete economic collapse. And Mark Carney's not going to stop that. He's going to accelerate it. But I think Poilievre should have emphasized change, and the fact that we need drastic change in this country, not just tinkering around with things, not just a little bit of decrease in the immigration and a few cuts here and a few slashes of regulations here. We need a complete seismic change in this country because I don't know if we can survive Mark Carney. I wrote this today and I said it in my own broadcast. Alberta is on the verge of separating from Canada right now because they are sick and tired of net zero policies. They're sick and tired of equalization payments that they have to give every other province because they happen to be richer than those other provinces. There's 40% now support for separation. And that poll was taken 2 weeks ago. Now that Carney's in, I predict it's going to go up. And it's a very real possibility that Alberta could separate. That will be the end of Canada. It will be chaos after that.
Well, and we got to go. But I know, Mark Carney, one of the things he said, of course, today is that every policy decision fiscally has to be related to climate change and net zero policy, everything.
How do you like those blackouts, Europe? Canada coming soon to a province near you.
Yeah, Alberta. A lot of people in our chat room are saying, Alberta, we're ready to leave. We're ready to leave. We got a lot of.
Well, I'm just going to give you a victory point. Again, you called this when Trudeau stepped down. You knew that this was a shoe-in for another Liberal victory because if Pierre Poilievre had been running against Justin Trudeau, it would have been a very different story. And so I'm sorry, you're just sick about it. We're sick with you. But, that gives us a lot of work to do. You're going to have to keep coming back on Redacted because we're going to have to keep following what these a-holes do.
Well, and David, also, I should say this. You weren't in the tank for Poilievre. You were out there very critical of Poilievre many times, and you were pointing the finger and saying, hey, pay attention to Maxime Bernier. You were saying, hey, open up your eyes to where you know, you were very critical of Poilievre on Ukraine and a whole host of issues. So, it's a sad day for Canada. But David, thank you so much. If you ever want to come down here to America, we have a guest room. We'll be able to take care of you.
You can seek taxation asylum.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, David. Great to see you.
All right. We have more news to get to.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, he's always great. And I feel just my heart, you know?
Yeah.
I feel this.
I have a really dear friend who's in Vancouver, and he's just so beside himself. Normally we chat like every day, and he's just like, he can't even talk right now. He's so apoplectic right now. So
Thank you for watching this episode of Stand on Guard and being a part of the Craydens Right channel. If you've watched this episode to this point, you've watched it all. And that's really important for a small station like this. We always say subscribe, hit the bell, be a part of the Crayden resistance. Resolve to resist. That's what we're doing. And if you become a subscriber, if you're a supporter of this station or a member through Substack, through YouTube, and now you can be a local as well, that's so important to us because I couldn't do this without you. I made a decision to become an independent journalist about a year ago because I wanted to bring all of my experience in the military, in journalism, to you. I don't promise anything I can't deliver. I don't offer clickbait. I offer truth. The truth is out there, and it's my job to bring that truth to light and to you. Thanks for being a part of the Craydens Right resistance, and we'll see you again soon.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need a political change, but we also need to resolve to resist.